The marble floor felt cold beneath my heels as I raced through the mansion's east wing, my breath coming in short gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Behind me, I could still hear Marcus's voice echoing through the hallway, my ex-boyfriend's desperate pleas following me like ghosts I'd been trying to outrun for the past 3 months. "Serafina, please, just hear me out." I didn't slow down. Couldn't. The engagement party downstairs was in full swing, the sound of laughter and clinking champagne glasses floating up through the ornate stairwell, a reminder of everything I was leaving behind. Tomorrow, I'd be on a plane to Boston, far from this suffocating world of family obligations and impossible loves. Far from Marcus, who couldn't understand why I'd ended things. Far from Sebastian, especially far from Sebastian. My fingers fumbled with the small clutch purse as I turned the corner, nearly colliding with a marble bust of some long-dead Moretti ancestor. The private elevator was just ahead, the one that led directly to the underground garage. My car was already packed, my apartment lease signed. All I had to do was make it through tonight without falling apart. "Serafina." Marcus's footsteps grew closer, his voice taking on a desperate edge that made my skin crawl. "You can't just throw away what we had." What we had. The phrase would have been laughable if it didn't make me want to scream. What we'd had was a relationship built on my father's approval and Marcus's ambition to climb higher in the Moretti family hierarchy. What we'd had was me trying desperately to feel something, anything, for a man who wasn't the one who'd haunted my dreams since I was 18 years old. I jabbed the elevator call button 3 times in quick succession, my heart hammering against my ribs. The ornate brass indicator above the doors showed the elevator climbing. 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th. "Come on, come on, come on." "I know you still care about me," Marcus said, rounding the corner behind me. His handsome face was flushed, his expensive tuxedo slightly disheveled from chasing me through the mansion. "You can't just walk away from this, from us, your father." "My father doesn't get to choose who I love," I snapped, whirling to face him. The words came out sharper than intended, years of pent-up frustration bleeding through my carefully maintained composure. "And neither do you, Marcus. I've told you 100 times. We're done. It's over. Accept it." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Something that reminded me why I'd always felt uneasy around him, even when I'd been trying so hard to make our relationship work. "You think you can do better? You think there's someone out there who'll put up with your stubborn pride, your sharp tongue, your—" The elevator chimed, cutting him off mid-sentence. Thank God. I turned my back on him, ready to escape into the elevator car and out of this nightmare. Ready to leave behind the mansion where I'd grown up, the family business I'd spent years trying to prove myself worthy of joining, and the man I could never have. The polished bronze doors slid open with a soft whisper. My breath caught in my throat. Sebastian Moretti stood in the center of the elevator car. One shoulder leaned casually against the mirrored wall, his dark eyes already locked on mine. Even in the warm golden light of the elevator, he looked like something carved from shadow and ice. 6 feet 2 inches of controlled power wrapped in an immaculate black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His dark hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his jaw and cheekbones that could cut glass. At 30 years old, Sebastian was everything his father had groomed him to be. Calculated, ruthless, untouchable. The future head of the Moretti family, a man who commanded respect through presence alone. He'd inherited his mother's Italian beauty and his father's cold pragmatism, creating something devastating and dangerous. And I'd been in love with him since the moment I understood what love meant. Going somewhere, Serafina? His voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my bones, that slight Italian accent he'd never quite lost wrapping around my name like silk and steel. I froze in the doorway, suddenly very aware of Marcus standing behind me, of the party continuing downstairs, of my carefully laid escape plans crumbling like sand between my fingers. Sebastian's gaze moved past me briefly, a flicker of acknowledgement toward Marcus that held more threat than 1,000 words, before returning to my face with an intensity that made my skin flush hot. Sebastian. I hated how breathless I sounded. Hated the way my body responded to his proximity even after all these years. I was just leaving. Were you? He straightened from the wall with liquid grace. taking a single step forward that somehow made the spacious elevator feel impossibly small. Strange. Your father specifically requested your presence at the engagement announcement. Seems rude to miss your own brother's celebration. Right. Dante's engagement to the Castellano girl. Another strategic alliance. Another piece moved on the chessboard of Mafia politics. Another reason I couldn't wait to get out of this world. I've already congratulated them, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I have an early flight tomorrow and... Come here, Serafina. The command in his voice wasn't loud, but it hit me like a physical force. Behind me, I heard Marcus take an involuntary step back. Everyone in the family knew better than to argue when Sebastian used that tone. Everyone except me. I'm not one of your soldiers to order around. I fired back, my chin lifting in automatic defiance even as my pulse raced. I'm not a child anymore, Sebastian. You can't just... I said, come here. The doors began to slide closed. Without thinking, I stepped forward into the elevator, my body obeying before my mind could catch up. The doors whispered shut behind me, cutting off Marcus's view and sealing me in the small space with the one man I'd been trying to avoid for the past 5 years. The one man who'd made it very clear, in 100 subtle and not-so-subtle ways, that I was nothing more than an inconvenient child playing at being an adult. Sebastian didn't press a button, didn't move toward the control panel. He just stood there, filling the space with his presence, his dark eyes tracking every micro-expression that crossed my face. You broke things off with Marcus 3 months ago, he said finally, his tone conversational despite the tension crackling between us. Yet he's still following you around like a lost puppy. Why? That's none of your business, I managed, pressing my back against the far wall, needing distance even as every cell in my body seemed drawn toward him like a compass to north. And how do you even know when I broke up with him? A slight curve of his lips, not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. I know everything that happens in this family, Serafina, especially when it concerns you. The words sent a shiver down my spine that I desperately tried to hide. Concerns me? You've barely spoken to me in 5 years. Every time I walk into a room, you walk out. Every family dinner where I try to discuss business with my father, you interrupt or dismiss my ideas before I can finish. You've made it abundantly clear that you think I'm... Finish that sentence, he interrupted, his voice dropping lower, and I'll show you exactly how wrong you are. My heart stuttered. What? Sebastian moved then, closing the distance between us in 2 strides that should have been impossible in such a small space. He didn't touch me, but he didn't need to. His proximity alone was enough to make my breathing shallow, my skin hyper-aware of every inch of space between us. You think I avoid you because you're a child? He spoke the words quietly, but there was something burning beneath the surface now, something I'd never seen before in his carefully controlled expression. You think I dismiss you at family meetings because I don't respect your intelligence? Don't you? I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded, hating the vulnerability creeping into my chest despite my best efforts to remain defiant. No, Serafina. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away, to protest. Instead, I stood frozen as his fingers brushed a strand of dark hair from my face, tucking it behind my ear with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man capable of such violence. I avoid you because every time you walk into a room, every shred of control I've spent years building threatens to shatter. I dismiss you at meetings because when you lean forward to make a point, when your eyes light up with that sharp intelligence you try to hide behind pretty smiles, when you bite your lower lip thinking no one notices, I forget every single reason why I can't have you. The elevator suddenly felt airless. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't seem to form words, couldn't process what he was saying because it couldn't be real. This couldn't be real. You're Lorenzo's daughter, Sebastian continued, his thumb now tracing the line of my jaw with devastating slowness. His pride and joy. The bright young lawyer who's going to legitimize this family's business dealings. You're off limits in every way that matters. And you're 12 years younger than me, Serafina. 12 years. When you were learning to read, I was already... Learning to kill? I finished for him, finding my voice again, finding that familiar spark of defiance that had always defined our interactions. Don't patronize me, Sebastian. I know exactly what you are. What we all are. I grew up in this world, same as you. That's the problem. His other hand came up, framing my face between his palms, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones with a tenderness that made my chest ache. You did grow up. And I tried. God, Serafina, I tried so hard to keep seeing you as that eager teenager who followed me around asking questions about every aspect of the business. Tried to maintain that distance, that professional courtesy. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a child and became the most dangerous weapon anyone could use against me. I'm not a weapon, I breathed, even as my hands came up to grip his wrists, not pulling away, but anchoring myself to him. Yes, you are. His forehead touched mine, and I could feel his breath against my lips. Could see the war being waged behind his eyes. You're the one weakness I can't afford. The one thing that could bring down everything I've built. Because if anyone ever figured out how much I want you, how many nights I've lain awake thinking about you, how hard it's been to watch Marcus put his hands on you when all I wanted to do was... The elevator shuddered slightly, beginning its descent. Sebastian jerked back as if burned, his hands falling away from my face, his expression slamming back into that familiar mask of cold control. But I'd seen beneath it now. I'd heard the crack in his voice, felt the tremor in his fingers. Your father will be wondering where you are, he said, his tone perfectly neutral again, as if the last few minutes hadn't happened, as if he hadn't just turned my entire world upside down. You should return to the party. Word count. 1. 287 words. The elevator descended in suffocating silence. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly, couldn't reconcile the Sebastian standing before me now. Perfectly composed, expression carved from marble. With the man who'd just confessed he'd been fighting his desire for me for years. Sebastian. Don't. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Whatever you're about to say, don't. The elevator chimed softly as we passed the 3rd floor. My reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman I barely recognized. Flushed cheeks, dilated pupils, lips slightly parted. I looked like I'd been thoroughly kissed, even though he hadn't touched me beyond those devastating caresses of my face. You can't just say something like that and then pretend it didn't happen, I said, finding my spine again, that stubborn pride Marcus had thrown in my face earlier surging back to life. You can't tell me you've wanted me for years and then dismiss me like what? He turned to face me fully, and the ice in his eyes was back, that impenetrable wall rebuilt so completely I might have imagined the cracks. Like the daughter of my father's most trusted advisor? Like a woman 12 years my junior who has her whole future ahead of her? Like someone who deserves better than a man with blood on his hands? Stop deciding what I deserve, I snapped, taking a step toward him even though every instinct screamed at me to maintain distance. I'm not a child, Sebastian. I'm 23 years old. I have a law degree from Harvard. I've sat in on enough family meetings to know exactly what this life entails. I've stitched up bullet wounds in this very mansion. I've helped dispose of evidence. I've lied to federal agents without blinking. Don't you dare stand there and pretend I'm some innocent little girl who doesn't understand what she's getting into. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or surprise that I was pushing back. Understanding intellectually and living it emotionally are two different things. Then let me make my own choices. My voice dropped lower, taking on an edge I'd learned from watching him all these years. Let me decide what I can handle. The elevator reached the ground floor, but Sebastian's hand shot out, pressing the button to keep the doors closed. We stared at each other in the dim golden light, the tension so thick I could taste it. You're leaving tomorrow, he said finally. Boston. Already signed a lease on an apartment, accepted a position at Morrison & Associates. Your bags are packed in your car. Ice flooded my veins. How do you know that? I told you. I know everything that concerns you. His gaze held mine, unflinching. Did you really think you could disappear without me noticing? Without me making sure you'd be safe? You've been watching me. It wasn't a question. The realization settled over me like a heavy cloak, equal parts unsettling and thrilling. For how long? Long enough to know that Marcus met with the Castellano family's second son twice last month. Long enough to know he's been skimming from the protection money collections in the warehouse district. Long enough to know that breaking up with him put you on his enemies list. And Marcus is vindictive when he doesn't get what he wants. My stomach dropped. My father doesn't know about the skimming? Not yet. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I've been handling it quietly, but Marcus is getting desperate, which makes him dangerous, especially to you. Then tell my father. Have Marcus dealt with. The words came out clinical, professional, even as my mind reeled with the implications. Marcus wasn't just a spurned ex-boyfriend. He was a liability to the family. And in this world, liabilities didn't last long. I will, after you're safely in Boston. His hand moved to the control panel, but didn't press any buttons. Which is why you need to leave tonight, not tomorrow morning. I've already had your flight moved up. There's a car waiting at the east entrance. You can't just... I stopped myself, recognizing the futility of that argument. Of course he could. Sebastian could do whatever he wanted. This is my life, Sebastian. My choices. You don't get to make them for me. I get to keep you alive. The words came out harsh, sharp-edged. That's all that matters. No. I moved closer, close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw, close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated that I'd always associated with safety, with home. What matters is that you finally told me the truth. You want me. After all these years of cold shoulders and dismissive comments and making me feel like I was invisible, you finally admitted it. A mistake. But his eyes betrayed him, dropping to my lips for a fraction of a second before snapping back up. Was it? I tilted my head, studying him the way I'd learned to study opponents in courtrooms and negotiation rooms. Or was it the first honest thing you've said to me in 5 years? The elevator gave a soft warning chime. We'd been stopped too long. Sebastian finally pressed the button for the garage level, and we began descending again. Serafina. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. You need to understand something. The reason I've kept my distance, the reason I've been so cold, it wasn't cruelty. It was survival. Because if I let myself have even one moment of weakness where you're concerned, I won't be able to stop. And you deserve someone who can give you a normal life. Someone who doesn't wake up calculating which enemies might use you against him. Someone who... I don't want normal. I interrupted. I never have. Why do you think I fought so hard to be part of the family business? Why do you think I pushed myself through law school in 3 years instead of 4? I want this life, Sebastian. I want to be useful, to be respected, to be seen as more than just Lorenzo's pretty daughter who should marry well and stay out of the way. The elevator doors opened onto the private garage. My car was parked in its usual spot, but next to it sat a black SUV with tinted windows, the kind the family used for security transports. The SUV will take you to the airport, Sebastian said, his voice carefully neutral again. Dante's inside. He'll make sure you get on the plane safely. My brother. Of course Sebastian would use my brother as a guard dog. I turned to face Sebastian fully, my back to the garage, suddenly understanding that this was it. The last time we'd be alone like this, possibly ever. I'm not running away from Marcus, I said quietly. I'm running away from you, from the way you make me feel, from the impossible situation of loving someone who's convinced himself he's not good enough for me. His expression cracked, just for a second. Serafina. I've loved you since I was 18 years old, Sebastian. The confession tumbled out. 5 years of pent-up emotion I'd kept locked away. I know you thought I was a child with a crush, and maybe it started that way. But it became so much more. Every argument we had about business strategy, every time you challenged my thinking and made me defend my positions, every rare moment when you actually looked at me like I was a person and not just a responsibility, I fell harder. And I finally realized I need to leave because staying here, loving you from a distance while you pretend I don't exist, is destroying me. The confession hung between us like a living thing. Sebastian's hands clenched at his sides, and for a moment I thought he might reach for me again. Instead, he took a deliberate step back. "Then go," he said, and his voice was so cold it could have frozen fire. "Go to Boston. Build your career. Find someone who can give you everything I can't. Forget about me, Serafina. Forget about this family. Live." The rejection shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. I'd been preparing myself for it, steeling myself against exactly this response. But hearing him tell me to forget him, to leave, to find someone else, felt like a knife between my ribs. "Coward," I whispered. His eyes flashed. "What did you say?" "I said you're a coward." I stepped out of the elevator, putting space between us even as everything in me screamed to close the distance instead. The great Sebastian Moretti, feared by enemies and respected by allies, too afraid to take what he wants because he might actually have to feel something. You talk about protecting me, about keeping me safe, but really you're just protecting yourself. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. I've watched you my entire adult life, Sebastian. I've seen you make impossible decisions without hesitation. I've seen you face down men who wanted you dead without flinching. But one honest conversation about feelings and you shut down completely. That's not strength. That's fear. He moved so fast I didn't have time to react. One moment he was in the elevator, the next his hand was around my wrist, pulling me back, spinning me to face him. His other hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his blazing gaze. "You want to know what I'm afraid of?" His voice was low, dangerous, vibrating with barely restrained emotion. "I'm afraid that if I let myself love you the way I want to, I'll become weak. I'll make mistakes. I'll hesitate when I need to act, second guess when I need to be certain. And in this world, weakness gets you killed. It gets the people you love killed. Then teach me to be strong enough." I held his gaze, refusing to back down. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. Stop pushing me away for my own good. Let me make my own choices, even if they're dangerous." "Serafina." "Miss Moretti?" Dante's voice cut through the moment. My brother stepped out of the SUV, his expression carefully neutral despite the scene he'd just witnessed. "We need to leave soon if we're going to make your flight." Sebastian's hands fell away from me immediately, that wall slamming back into place. "She's coming." "No, I'm not." I turned to my brother, then back to Sebastian. "I'm going to the party. I'm going to smile and play the dutiful daughter and congratulate Dante on his engagement. And tomorrow morning, I'll drive myself to the airport, get on my plane, and start my new life. Alone, just like you want." That's not what I... Goodbye, Sebastian. I walked past him toward the elevator that would take me back to the party, my heels clicking on the concrete floor with each step. Thank you for finally being honest with me, even if you regret it. I pressed the call button, and the doors slid open immediately. A different elevator car, but it might as well have been the same gilded cage. I stepped inside and turned to face him one last time. Sebastian stood in the middle of the garage, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him, more human than the cold enforcer everyone feared. For just a moment, I saw the man beneath the mask, the one who'd confessed he thought about me at night, who'd admitted I was his weakness. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. I sagged against the wall as the elevator climbed, my carefully maintained composure finally cracking. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back ruthlessly. I'd cried enough over Sebastian Moretti. I'd spent 5 years hoping he'd see me as more than a child, more than a responsibility. And now that he'd finally admitted he did, he was still pushing me away. The elevator reached the main floor, and I stepped out into the sound of music and laughter. The engagement party was in full swing in the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers casting golden light over designer gowns and expensive suits, champagne flowing freely, the cream of the city's underworld celebrating another strategic alliance. I pasted on a smile and made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who probably didn't even remember my name. In this world, daughters were ornamental. We were bargaining chips and diplomatic tools, not individuals with our own dreams and ambitions. There you are. My father appeared at my elbow, his silver-streaked hair and kind eyes so at odds with the ruthless businessman I knew him to be. I was beginning to think you'd slipped out early. Thought about it, I admitted, kissing his cheek. But I wouldn't miss Dante's big night. Lorenzo Ricci studied me with the same sharp intelligence that had made him invaluable to the Moretti family for 3 decades. Are you all right, Principessa? You look upset. Just tired. It's been a long night. I squeezed his hand. I should probably head out soon. Early flight tomorrow. About that? His expression grew serious. I need to talk to you about Boston. There have been some developments. Lorenzo. Sebastian's voice cut through the music and chatter. I turned to find him standing a few feet away, looking perfectly composed again, every trace of the emotional turmoil from the garage erased. A word? It's urgent. My father's eyes narrowed slightly. He could sense the tension, but he nodded. Of course. Serafina, we'll talk before you leave tomorrow. I watched them move toward a private corner. Watched Sebastian's mouth move as he spoke urgently to my father. Watched my father's expression grow grim. Whatever Sebastian was telling him, it wasn't good news. And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew. He was telling him about Marcus, about the skimming, about the meetings with the Castellano family's second son, about the danger I was in. Word count, 1, 297 words. The party had taken on a surreal quality. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, smiling and nodding at the appropriate moments, while my mind remained trapped in that garage elevator, replaying Sebastian's confession on an endless loop. Around me, the Moretti family's closest allies and most dangerous associates celebrated my brother's strategic engagement, unaware that somewhere in a private corner, my future was being decided without me. I just accepted another glass of champagne from a passing server, my third, or maybe fourth, not that I was planning to drink any of them, when a hand closed around my elbow. Gentle, but firm. We need to talk. Sebastian's voice was low enough that no one around us could hear. Now. I thought we were done talking, I said, not looking at him, still facing the crowd of glittering guests. Your father wants to see us both. His office. There was something different in his tone now. Not cold, not distant, but laced with an urgency that made my stomach clench. It's about Marcus. Of course it was. I let him guide me through the ballroom, aware of the curious glances that followed us. Sebastian Moretti and Lorenzo Ricci's daughter, leaving a party together. By tomorrow there would be whispers, speculation. In a world where information was currency and rumors could be weaponized, we'd just given the gossips fresh ammunition. My father's office was on the 3rd floor, down a hallway lined with Renaissance paintings that were probably worth more than some country's GDP. The heavy oak door was already ajar, warm light spilling into the corridor. Lorenzo sat behind his massive mahogany desk, looking older than I'd seen him in years. 2 other men stood near the fireplace, Antonio Moretti, Sebastian's father and head of the family, and my brother Dante, his expression grim. Sit down, Serafina. My father's voice was gentle, but the command underneath was unmistakable. I remained standing. What's going on? Marcus Vitale has been stealing from the family for 8 months, Antonio said bluntly. The elder Moretti had none of his son's cold elegance. He was all brutal efficiency and barely contained violence. Over $300,000, funneled through fake vendors and inflated expense reports. He's also been meeting with Luca Castellano, presumably sharing information about our operations. The room tilted slightly. $300,000. That wasn't petty theft. That was grounds for execution. How long have you known? I asked, looking directly at Sebastian. 6 weeks, he admitted. I've been building a case, confirming the details. I wanted to be certain before bringing it to Antonio and your father. And you didn't think to tell me? The betrayal cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I was sleeping next to him, Sebastian. If he's dangerous, if he's compromised. You broke up with him 3 months ago. My father interrupted. Long before Sebastian confirmed the theft. As if you sensed something was wrong. I had sensed something wrong, but not what they thought. I'd sensed that I was with the wrong man, that I was trying to force myself to feel something that wasn't there, because it was easier than admitting I was in love with someone I could never have. "What does this have to do with me going to Boston?" I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. The four men exchanged glances, that infuriating male communication that happened without words. "Marcus knows you're leaving," Dante said finally. "He's desperate. Luca Castellano promised him protection if he delivers valuable intelligence about our operations, and he thinks you're the key to getting it." "I don't have access to sensitive information," I protested. "I'm not an actual member of the family business, just a lawyer who occasionally sits in on meetings." "You have access to your father," Antonio said quietly. "And Marcus knows Lorenzo tells his beloved daughter everything. You're a target, Serafina, which means we need to keep you close until the situation is resolved." The words landed like a physical blow. "You want me to cancel Boston?" "We want you alive," Sebastian said, and there was something raw in his voice despite his carefully controlled expression. "Marcus approached the Bratva 2 days ago. He's trying to sell information to the Russians now, casting a wider net. He's painting you as a treasure trove of family secrets." "That's insane. It doesn't matter if it's true," my father said gently. "It matters that he's convinced dangerous people you're worth taking. The Bratva wouldn't hesitate to kidnap you, torture you for information, then kill you when you couldn't provide what they wanted." The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. I stared at my father, at the genuine fear in his eyes, and something in me cracked. "How long?" My voice came out steady despite the fear coursing through me. "How long do I have to stay?" "Until Marcus is dealt with," Antonio said. "A few days, maybe a week. We're locating him now." "And when you find him?" I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it said aloud. "He'll be eliminated," Sebastian said bluntly, "along with anyone he's shared information with. We can't leave loose ends." I moved to the window overlooking the gardens, needing a moment to process. Behind me, I heard the men discussing logistics, security details, safe houses, contingency plans. They were planning my life around me, making decisions for my safety without asking what I wanted. "There's another option." My voice cut through their discussion. "I could help you find him." The silence that followed was deafening. "Absolutely not," my father said. "Serafina," Sebastian began. "I'm a lawyer," I interrupted, turning to face them. "I know how to negotiate, how to gather evidence, how to play a part. Marcus still thinks I might come back to him. He made that clear tonight when he cornered me. I could arrange a meeting, wear a wire, get him to confess everything on tape." "No." Sebastian's voice was hard as steel. "That's not happening." "Why not?" "Because I'm too precious. Too fragile." I let some of my frustration bleed into my words. "I've sat in this office dozens of times listening to plans more dangerous than this. I've watched you all make calculated risks with people's lives. Why is mine any different?" "Because you're not trained for field work," Dante said quietly. "Because one wrong word, one suspicious move, and Marcus could kill you before we could intervene. And if I do nothing, the Bratva might grab me off the street," I countered. "At least this way I have some control. I'm not just waiting to be a victim." Antonio studied me with new interest. "She has a point. Using her as bait could draw Marcus out faster." "No." Sebastian's voice carried absolute authority. "Find another way." "It's not your decision to make," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "It's mine. My life, my risk, my choice." The muscle in his jaw ticked dangerously. "Lorenzo, talk to your daughter." My father was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "What exactly are you proposing, Principessa?" "A meeting in a public place. Somewhere Marcus would feel safe, but where your men could position themselves. I tell him I'm reconsidering Boston, that I want to understand why he's been so persistent. I was making this up as I went, but it felt right, felt better than cowering behind guards. I get him talking. Get him to admit what he's done. You get your confession and your location on him. And when he realizes you're wired? Sebastian demanded. When he figures out it's a trap. Then your men move in. But they'll already be close, already in position. You said yourself Marcus is desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Antonio nodded slowly. I like it. It's bold, shows strength. It's suicide, Sebastian snapped. No, it's justice. I moved toward the desk, placing my palms flat on the polished wood, looking at each man in turn. Marcus made his choices. He stole from you, he plotted against you, and he's put everyone I love in danger. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes he's been caught. I want him to know I'm not the naive girl he thought he could manipulate. My father's eyes softened with something like pride. You sound like your mother. She had the same fire. Don't encourage this, Sebastian said, but there was defeat creeping into his voice. He could see the decision being made around him, could see that I wasn't backing down. If we do this, Antonio said carefully, you follow the plan exactly. You wear the wire, you stay in public, and the moment anything feels wrong, you use the code word and we extract you immediately. Understood? Understood. Relief flooded through me, despite the fear coiling in my stomach. This is a mistake, Sebastian said quietly, his gaze locked on mine. You're going to get yourself killed proving a point. Maybe. I straightened, holding his stare. Or maybe I'm going to prove I'm exactly as strong as I've been telling you I am. That I deserve to make my own choices, even dangerous ones. The accusation hung in the air between us. This wasn't just about Marcus anymore. This was about Sebastian's refusal to let me in, his insistence on protecting me from everything, including himself. Set up the meeting, Antonio ordered. 24 hours from now. Dante, coordinate with our best surveillance team. Lorenzo, brief Serafina on exactly what information she should try to extract. Sebastian. I'll oversee the operation personally, Sebastian said, his tone leaving no room for argument. If she's determined to do this, I'll make sure every possible precaution is in place. Good. Antonio moved toward the door. We'll meet again tomorrow afternoon to finalize details. Serafina, try to get some sleep. You'll need to be sharp. They filed out one by one until only Sebastian and I remained. The fire crackled quietly, casting dancing shadows across the office. Neither of us moved. You didn't have to volunteer for this, Sebastian said finally. We would have found Marcus eventually. Eventually isn't good enough. Not when he's already approached the Bratva. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the fire's warmth. And I meant what I said. I'm tired of being protected from everything. Tired of being treated like I'll shatter if life gets difficult. There's a difference between being strong and being reckless. Is there? I met his gaze across the room. You take calculated risks all the time. You walk into meetings with men who want you dead. You make decisions that could end in violence. Why is that strength when you do it but recklessness when I do? Because... He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Because what, Sebastian? Because I'm a woman? Because I'm Lorenzo's daughter? Because you want me, and that makes me somehow more fragile in your mind? I moved closer, drawn by that invisible thread that always seemed to connect us. I'm not made of glass. I'm made of the same steel and survival instinct as everyone else in this family. I know that. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual control. God, Serafina, I know exactly how strong you are. That's what terrifies me. Why? He turned away, bracing his hands on the mantel, staring into the flames. Because strong people do dangerous things. They take risks. They refuse to be protected. And if something happened to you because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't there, then that would be on the people who hurt me, not on you. I closed the distance between us, close enough to touch but still maintaining that last inch of space. You can't control everything, Sebastian. You can't protect me from the entire world. I can try. The words were so quiet I almost missed them. What if I don't want protection? I asked. What if I want partnership instead? Someone who sees me as an equal, who respects my choices even when they're risky. He turned then, and the look in his eyes stole my breath. hunger and fear, and something that might have been hope, all warring for dominance. 24 hours, he said. We have 24 hours to make sure this plan works, to keep you safe. And if anything goes wrong, if Marcus so much as looks at you the wrong way, you'll be there, I finished. I know. I trust you, Sebastian. Even when you're being an overprotective idiot who thinks he knows what's best for me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Overprotective idiot? The worst kind. I found myself smiling back, some of the tension between us easing. But you're my overprotective idiot, whether you're ready to admit that or not. Serafina. Tomorrow, I said, stepping back before I could do something stupid, like close that last inch of distance and kiss him. We'll deal with Marcus tomorrow. Tonight I need to go home and prepare. Figure out exactly what I'm going to say to make him trust me one more time. I'll have men watching your apartment. I know. I moved toward the door, then paused. Sebastian, thank you for telling my father, for not letting Marcus's betrayal go unnoticed, for protecting the family. Always. The word was heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack. I left him standing by the fire, walked back through the now quiet mansion. The party had wound down while we'd been in that meeting, and made my way to my car. True to Sebastian's word, a black SUV followed me at a discreet distance all the way back to my apartment. Inside my small but tastefully decorated space, I finally allowed myself to process everything that had happened tonight. The confrontation in the elevator, Sebastian's confession, the meeting with my father and Antonio, the plan that would put me directly in Marcus's path. 24 hours from now, I'd be wearing a wire, meeting with my ex-boyfriend, trying to extract a confession that would seal his fate. And somewhere nearby, Sebastian would be watching, listening, ready to intervene. I poured myself a glass of wine, just one, to steady my nerves, and stood at my window overlooking the city. Boston felt like a distant dream now, a life I'd been planning that was already slipping away. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe I'd been running toward something that wasn't meant for me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow. S. I typed back. Don't worry so much. I've got this. His response came immediately. That's what worries me most. Despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the impossible situation we were in, I smiled. Tomorrow, I'd prove to Sebastian Moretti that I was strong enough to stand beside him, not behind him. That I deserved to make my own choices, take my own risks. Tomorrow, everything would change. Word count. 347 words. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was predictably pretentious, a high-end Italian place in the financial district where business deals were sealed over 20-ounce steaks and $1,000 bottles of wine. Neutral ground, he'd called it when I'd texted him yesterday. Somewhere we could talk without family pressure. What he didn't know was that Sebastian owned a third of the building through one of his shell corporations. That 3 of the servers were actually Moretti soldiers. That the man reading a newspaper at the corner table was Dante. That Sebastian himself was in the manager's office, listening to every word through the wire taped between my breasts. I smoothed down the emerald silk dress I'd chosen. Expensive, but not flashy. Elegant, but not provocative. The kind of outfit that said I'd put in effort without trying too hard. My hair was down in loose waves, and I'd kept my makeup subtle. Every detail calculated to put Marcus at ease. The wire itched against my skin, a constant reminder of the dozen men positioned throughout the restaurant and surrounding streets. Antonio had given final approval for the operation this morning, his face grave as he'd warned me one last time that Marcus was dangerous, unpredictable. You feel anything wrong, you say honeymoon, Sebastian had said, as the tech fitted my wire, his voice tight with controlled tension. That's your safe word. The moment you say it, we're coming in. I know the plan, I'd replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I've been over it 50 times. Make it 51. His hand had come up as if to touch my face, then fallen back to his side. Don't take any risks. Don't try to be clever. Just get him talking. Let him incriminate himself. And get out. Now, sitting at the quiet corner table Marcus had reserved, I focused on breathing steadily. My heart raced beneath my ribs, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The sommelier, one of ours, had poured me a glass of red wine I wouldn't drink. The waiter, also ours, had taken our order with professional disinterest. Marcus arrived exactly on time, looking like the successful businessman he pretended to be. Tailored gray suit, expensive watch, that charming smile he'd used to win me over a year ago. Before I'd realized the smile never reached his eyes. Serafina. He bent to kiss my cheek, and I fought not to recoil. You look beautiful. I'm glad you agreed to meet. I almost didn't, I said, keeping my voice neutral. After how you acted at the party. I know. I'm sorry. He sat across from me, his expression contrite. I was upset, jealous, seeing you with... He trailed off, but his eyes said what his mouth didn't. Seeing you with Sebastian. He's my brother's best friend, I said carefully. We were just talking. Right. Marcus didn't believe it, but he let it go. You said you wanted to discuss Boston. Does that mean you're having second thoughts? This was it, the opening I needed. I don't know anymore. I took a pretend sip of wine, gathering my thoughts. Everything happened so fast with us, Marcus. The breakup, the decision to leave. I feel like maybe I didn't give us a fair chance. Hope flared in his eyes, raw and dangerous. I've been saying that for months. We were good together, Sarah. We could be again. Could we? I leaned forward slightly. I need to know I can trust you, that you're being honest with me about everything. Something shifted in his expression, calculation replacing warmth. What do you mean? I mean, I've heard things. I kept my voice soft, uncertain. Rumors around the family. My father seems concerned about something. And Sebastian's been asking questions. I need to know if it has anything to do with you. With us. Marcus went very still. What kind of questions? About finances. About meetings you've had. I let vulnerability creep into my voice, playing the naive girlfriend perfectly. If there's something going on, something I should know, I need you to tell me. I can't go back to you with secrets between us. There are no secrets, he said too quickly. Your brother's best friend is paranoid, that's all. He doesn't trust anyone outside the immediate family. Then why does my father seem worried? I pressed. Why have the security details doubled around the house? Marcus's jaw tightened. He was weighing something, trying to decide how much to reveal. If I tell you something, he said slowly, I need to know it stays between us. That you won't run to your father or... His lip curled slightly. To Sebastian. Of course. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. The touch made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to squeeze gently. You can trust me, Marcus. I want to understand what's happening. He looked around the restaurant, checking for listeners. If only he knew. Things have been difficult in the organization lately, he said quietly. There are factions forming. People who think Antonio is getting too old, that he's lost his edge. People who think Sebastian is too cold, too ruthless. There's going to be a shift in power, Sarah, and I need to make sure I'm on the right side when it happens. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just theft. This was mutiny. What kind of shift? I asked, keeping my voice level. The Castellanos are making moves. They have allies in the Bratva, connections in city government. They're building a coalition to challenge the Moretti's control. Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. And they approached me 3 months ago, offered me protection, a position in their organization, if I could provide information about Antonio's operations. And you agreed? I let shock color my voice. Marcus, that's... Smart, he interrupted. It's smart, Serafina. The Moretti's time is ending. Your father is loyal to a dying regime. But you and me? We could be part of something new. Something stronger. Is that why you've been taking money? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? I'm not stupid, Marcus. I notice things. I pulled my hand back, creating distance. The question is, what else have you been doing? For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then something ugly twisted his features, the mask finally slipping. "You're wired." It wasn't a question. "What? No, stand up." His hand shot across the table, gripping my wrist painfully. "Stand up slowly, or I'll make a scene that gets everyone in this restaurant killed." My heart hammered against my ribs. Around us, I could sense rather than see the Moretti soldiers tensing, waiting for my signal. "Marcus, you're hurting me." "Good." He stood, pulling me up with him, his other hand reaching into his jacket. "We're going to walk out of here together, nice and calm. And if your boyfriend's men try to stop us, I'll put a bullet in your spine before they can blink." "Honeymoon," I said clearly, letting the fear I actually felt bleed into my voice. "This isn't the honeymoon I imagined." Everything happened at once. The server dropped his tray with a crash, revealing a gun. Dante stood up from his table, weapon already drawn. 2 more men materialized from the kitchen, blocking the exits. And Sebastian appeared from the office doorway like an avenging angel, his expression colder than I'd ever seen it. "Let her go, Marcus." Sebastian's voice was deadly calm. "You're surrounded. There's no way out." Marcus laughed, a desperate sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think I didn't plan for this? You think I came here without insurance?" He yanked me against his chest, his arm wrapping around my throat, the cold press of metal against my ribs making it very clear he'd been telling the truth about the gun. "Everyone stays back," Marcus shouted, "or she dies right here." The restaurant had gone silent. The handful of civilian diners were frozen in their seats, some with phones out but too afraid to move. The Moretti soldiers held their positions, weapons trained on Marcus but unable to shoot without risking hitting me. "You're only making this worse," Sebastian said, taking a step closer. "Let her go, and we can talk. Find a solution. The only solution is you let me walk out of here." Marcus's arm tightened around my throat, making it hard to breathe. "I've got a car waiting 2 blocks away. I take her with me, drive to a secondary location, and once I'm safe, I'll let her go." "You'll kill her the moment you're clear," Dante said flatly. "Maybe." Marcus's voice was steady despite the insanity of his position. "But that's better odds than she has if you try to take me down here." Sebastian's gaze met mine across the restaurant. In his eyes, I saw fury and fear and something that looked like agony, the cold, calculating man stripped away to reveal raw emotion. "Don't do this," he said, and I realized he wasn't talking to Marcus anymore. He was talking to me. "Don't try to be a hero." But I'd learned from watching him all these years. I'd learned that sometimes the only way to win was to take a calculated risk. Marcus was pressed against me, his focus split between the armed men surrounding us and his escape route. His gun was against my ribs, but his finger wasn't on the trigger. Not yet. He needed me as a shield, which meant he couldn't afford to make me dead weight. I let my body go limp, dropping my full weight suddenly. Marcus's arm loosened in surprise, his grip shifting. It was only a second, maybe less, but it was enough. I drove my elbow back into his solar plexus with all the force I could muster. The gun went off, a deafening crack in the enclosed space. But the bullet went wild, shattering a wine bottle behind the bar. I threw myself forward, away from Marcus, hitting the floor hard. Chaos erupted. Dante moved first, closing the distance before Marcus could recover. Sebastian was there half a second later, his fist connecting with Marcus's jaw with enough force to spin him halfway around. The gun went flying, skittering across the marble floor. 3 soldiers materialized around Marcus, forcing him to the ground, zip-tying his hands behind his back with practiced efficiency. He was still trying to fight, still shouting threats and curses. But it was over. He'd lost. Strong hands lifted me from the floor. Sebastian pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me with enough force to hurt. He was shaking. I could feel the tremors running through his body, could hear his heart hammering against my ear. "You could have been killed," he said roughly. That was insane, reckless. It worked. I managed, my own adrenaline starting to crash. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands framing my face with desperate gentleness. You will never be fine again. Do you understand? You will never be safe. Never be just Lorenzo's daughter living her quiet life. Because now every enemy we have will know you're important to me. They'll all see what I see, that you're my weakness. Then stop calling it a weakness, I said, covering his hands with mine. And start calling it what it really is. What's that? Strength. I held his gaze, letting him see everything I felt. You're stronger with me than without me. We both are. Around us, the cleanup had already begun. Antonio had arrived, taking charge of the situation with grim efficiency. Marcus was being dragged toward the kitchen, toward whatever end awaited traitors in this world. The civilian diners were being ushered out, their phones confiscated, their memories of tonight's events about to become extremely unreliable. Sebastian's thumb traced the line of my jaw, his eyes searching mine as if memorizing every detail. You're not going to Boston. No, I agreed. I'm not. You're going to stay, work for the family officially. Let me keep you safe. It wasn't quite a question, but almost. I'm going to stay, I confirmed, but not to be kept safe, to be your partner, your equal. The person who challenges you and keeps you honest and refuses to let you push her away when things get dangerous. Serafina. Those are my terms, Sebastian. I stepped back from his embrace, needing him to see that I meant this. I stay, but on my terms. Not as Lorenzo's protected daughter. Not as your guilty conscience. As myself. Take it or leave it. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then slowly, something that might have been a smile touched his lips. You're going to be the death of me, he said softly. Probably. I smiled back. But at least you won't die bored. He laughed then, a genuine sound of surprised joy that transformed his face. And before I could second-guess myself, before fear or propriety or common sense could intervene, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. His surprise lasted maybe half a second. Then his arms were around me again, his mouth moving against mine with a hunger that stole my breath. This wasn't the gentle, restrained kiss I'd imagined during all those years of secret longing. This was desperation and relief and promises made without words. Someone, probably Dante, coughed loudly. We pulled apart slowly, reality reasserting itself. We were standing in the middle of a restaurant where a man had just been taken down, where my father and Antonio were probably watching, where every soldier in a 3-block radius had just witnessed Sebastian Moretti kissing Lorenzo Ricci's daughter. Well, I said, slightly breathless. I guess that's decided then. Decided? Sebastian's arms were still around me, showing no signs of letting go. That we're doing this, whatever this is, together. Together, he agreed. Then quieter. You're sure? Because once everyone knows, there's no taking it back. You'll be tied to me, to this family, to everything we are, the good and the very, very bad. I'm sure. And I was. Despite the fear, despite the danger, despite every logical reason to run, I was absolutely certain. I've been sure since I was 18 years old. I was just waiting for you to catch up. He kissed me again, softer this time, but no less intense. And in that moment, surrounded by the aftermath of violence and betrayal, I felt something click into place, like a puzzle piece I'd been trying to force into the wrong spot, finally finding where it belonged. This was my life now. Not the safe, sanitized version I'd been planning in Boston. Not the half-existence of loving Sebastian from a distance. But the real, dangerous, complicated truth of standing beside him in the darkness and refusing to look away. Word count. 1,296 words. The aftermath of Marcus's capture unfolded like a carefully choreographed play. Within hours, Antonio had extracted a full confession. The names of everyone involved in the plot against the family, the extent of the Castellanos' infiltration, the Bratva connections that ran deeper than anyone had suspected. By sunrise, 3 more traitors had been identified and quietly removed from their positions. I didn't ask what removed meant. I didn't need to. What I did do was sit in on every meeting about the cleanup, taking notes and offering legal perspectives on how to document everything in ways that would hold up under scrutiny should it ever be needed. My father watched me with a mixture of pride and concern, recognizing that his daughter had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Sebastian watched me with something else entirely. We'd kept things professional in front of the family for exactly 4 hours after that kiss in the restaurant. Then he'd cornered me in a supply closet like we were teenagers sneaking around, kissed me breathless, and made me promise we'd talk, really talk, once the immediate crisis was handled. Talk, I'd repeated, my fingers twisted in his shirt. Is that what we're calling it? Among other things. His mouth had found that sensitive spot below my ear. But first, I need to make sure you're actually safe, that every loose end is tied up. That had been 3 days ago. 3 days of constant meetings, security briefings, and tense phone calls with allies across the city. 3 days of Sebastian and I stealing moments in corridors, exchanging loaded glances across conference tables, building tension that was becoming harder to ignore. Now, standing in Antonio's office with the full Moretti inner circle assembled, I felt the weight of every decision that had led me here. The Castellanos have withdrawn their challenge, Antonio announced, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a predator who'd successfully defended his territory. Luca denies any involvement with Marcus's plot, claims he was approached but never agreed to help. We have no proof otherwise. He's lying, Sebastian said flatly from where he leaned against the far wall. Marcus named him specifically. Marcus is dead, Dante pointed out. His testimony died with him. I kept my expression neutral at the confirmation of what I'd already suspected. Marcus's fate had been sealed the moment he'd put that gun to my ribs. In this world, some transgressions couldn't be forgiven. The Bratva is a larger concern, my father said, studying the documents spread across Antonio's desk. If they're actively recruiting against us. I've already opened communications with Dmitry Volkov, Antonio interrupted. He claims no knowledge of any arrangements with Marcus. Says his organization maintains its neutrality in our territorial disputes. Another lie, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. Marcus specifically mentioned Bratva connections the night of Dante's engagement party. He wouldn't have made that up. He was desperate to prove he had powerful allies. Serafina's right, Sebastian said. The Bratva is playing both sides, waiting to see who comes out on top before committing, which means we need to demonstrate strength. Or forge a better alliance, I suggested. The Bratva responds to power, but they also respect intelligence. If we can offer them something they want more than what the Castellanos can provide. What do you have in mind? Antonio asked, his expression thoughtful. I pulled out my laptop, calling up the research I'd been doing for the past 2 days. The Volkov organization has been trying to legitimize their money laundering operations through real estate, but they lack the legal expertise to navigate the regulatory frameworks without raising red flags. What if we offered them access to our legal infrastructure? A partnership that benefits both families while making it prohibitively expensive for them to ever work against us. The room fell silent as everyone processed the suggestion. That's actually brilliant, Dante said finally. We'd be making them dependent on our expertise while gaining leverage over their operations. It's risky, my father countered. Bringing the Bratva deeper into our business? They're already in our business, I interrupted gently. This just gives us control over how and where. Plus, it positions us as problem solvers rather than just threats. The Castellanos can't compete with that. Sebastian was staring at me with an intensity that made heat rise to my cheeks. When did you put this together? I've been thinking about it since the restaurant. I closed my laptop. Marcus said the Castellanos were building a coalition. The best way to counter that is to build a stronger one ourselves. One based on mutual benefit rather than just fear. Antonio's laugh was genuine. Lorenzo, your daughter is wasted as just a lawyer. She thinks like a strategist. She thinks like a Moretti, Sebastian said quietly, which is going to make certain things much simpler. The implication in his words wasn't lost on anyone in the room. My father's expression grew cautious. Sebastian, Lorenzo said carefully, perhaps we should discuss. I'm in love with your daughter. Sebastian's blunt announcement cut through whatever diplomatic approach my father had been planning. Have been for years. I've fought it, denied it, tried to maintain proper distance. But after what happened with Marcus, after watching her risk her life because we'd put her in an impossible situation, I'm done pretending. The silence was deafening. I see, my father said finally. And Serafina? How do you feel about this? I feel like everyone in this room has probably known for years and has just been waiting for us to acknowledge it, I said, meeting Sebastian's gaze across the room. And I feel like it's about time we stopped sneaking around like we're doing something wrong. Antonio's smile was knowing. I knew the moment I saw you two in that restaurant. The way Sebastian moved when Marcus grabbed you, I've never seen him lose control like that. I didn't lose control, Sebastian protested. You beat a man unconscious in front of a dozen witnesses, Dante said dryly. For Sebastian Moretti, that's practically a love confession written in the sky. Despite the tension, I found myself smiling. He does have a flair for dramatic gestures. This is serious, my father said, though there was no real anger in his voice. Sebastian, you're next in line to lead this family. Serafina is my daughter, but she's also becoming an integral part of our operations. If you two are together, it changes power dynamics, creates complications. Or it strengthens the alliance between our families, Sebastian interrupted. Lorenzo, you've been Antonio's right hand for 30 years. I can't think of a better way to cement that partnership than by making it official through marriage. Marriage. The word hung in the air like a challenge. We're not discussing marriage yet, I said quickly, seeing my father's face pale slightly. We're discussing the fact that Sebastian and I care about each other and want to see where this goes without the entire family treating it like a political crisis. Everything is political in our world, Antonio said, but his expression was thoughtful. However, Serafina has a point. Let's not put the cart before the horse. For now, the important thing is that we've neutralized the immediate threat, and we have a strategy for strengthening our position. The personal relationship between Sebastian and Lorenzo's daughter is their business. Provided it doesn't compromise either of their judgment, my father added firmly, looking at each of us in turn. It won't, Sebastian said with absolute certainty. If anything, it makes me more focused, more determined to protect what's ours. The meeting continued for another hour, finalizing plans for approaching the Bratva, discussing security measures, and assigning responsibilities. But something had shifted. There was an acknowledgement now, an acceptance that Sebastian and I were no longer going to be kept apart. When the meeting finally ended, my father pulled me aside as others filed out. Are you sure about this, Principessa? His voice was gentle, concerned. Sebastian's world is darker than even I deal with. He's being groomed to take Antonio's place, which means... I know what it means, I said softly. I know what I'm choosing, Papa, and I'm choosing it with open eyes. He studied my face for a long moment, then pulled me into a tight embrace. You have your mother's courage, and her stubbornness. I just hope it's enough. It will be. I squeezed him back, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. Besides, someone needs to keep Sebastian honest. Might as well be me, he laughed, but there were tears in his eyes when we pulled apart. When did you grow up? It seems like yesterday you were following him around, asking 1,000 questions about everything. I'm still asking questions. He's just finally answering them. After my father left, I found Sebastian waiting for me in the hallway, his back against the wall, arms crossed. In the dim light, he looked younger somehow, less the feared enforcer, and more just a man. Your father didn't threaten to kill me, he observed. I'm taking that as approval. Or he's saving the threats for later. I moved closer, drawn by that same magnetic pull that had defined us for years. When we're alone and he can be more specific about what happens if you hurt me. I would never hurt you. His hands came up, framing my face with that gentleness that always surprised me. But I will complicate your life in about 1,000 different ways. This world, my responsibilities, the danger. Stop. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Stop trying to talk me out of this. I've made my choice. You've made yours. Can we just exist in that for a moment without planning for disaster? His lips curved against my fingers. You're asking a strategist to stop strategizing. I'm asking the man I love to kiss me before someone else interrupts with another crisis. Well, when you put it that way. His mouth captured mine, and I stopped thinking about family politics and Bratva alliances and all the complicated tangles of our world. For a moment, there was just this. His arms around me, his heart beating against mine. The simple truth of two people who'd been fighting their way to each other for far too long. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian rested his forehead against mine. "I have something to show you," he said quietly. "Come with me." He led me through the mansion to a wing I'd rarely visited, the private family quarters where Antonio and his late wife had raised their children. Sebastian's childhood room had been converted into an office years ago, but it still held traces of the boy he'd been. Books on strategy and history, a fencing trophy from his teenage years, photos of him with Dante and my brother, all of them younger and less hardened by their world. But it was the wall safe he was opening that drew my attention. "I've been holding on to this," Sebastian said, withdrawing a small velvet box. Waiting for the right moment, or maybe just waiting for the courage. My breath caught as he turned to face me, the box balanced on his palm. This was my mother's. He opened it to reveal a stunning emerald ring, the stone surrounded by diamonds that caught the light. She gave it to me a week before she died, told me to save it for the woman I couldn't live without. "Sebastian." "I'm not proposing," he interrupted quickly. "Not yet. Not when we've barely begun this. But I wanted you to see it. To know that when I said I've been fighting this for years, I meant it. You're not a phase, Serafina. You're not a mistake or a weakness. You're the woman I've been waiting for since I first saw you argue circles around a federal prosecutor at your father's dinner table 5 years ago." Tears blurred my vision. I was so nervous that night, trying so hard to prove I belonged in those conversations. "You destroyed him." Sebastian's smile was full of pride. Demolished every one of his arguments with case law and precedent he'd never even heard of. And I sat there thinking, I am so utterly screwed, because I knew right then that you were going to ruin me for anyone else. "Good," I whispered, "because you ruined me first." He closed the box, returning it carefully to the safe. "Soon, when the dust settles from all this, when I can ask properly, without a dozen crises hanging over our heads, I'm going to ask you to marry me, Serafina Ricci, and I very much hope you'll say yes." "I very much hope you'll be patient enough to wait for the asking," I replied, wrapping my arms around his neck. "Because right now, I just want to enjoy this. Us, without planning 3 moves ahead for once." "I can do that." His arms came around my waist, pulling me closer. "For you, I can learn to live in the moment." We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, letting the tension of the past weeks slowly ease. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Somewhere out there, the Castellanos were regrouping. The Bratva was calculating their next move, and 100 other threats were forming in the shadows. But here, in this moment, we were just Sebastian and Serafina, 2 people who'd fought their way through denial and danger to find each other. And for now, that was enough. Word count. 297 words. 6 months later, the world looked entirely different. I stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sebastian's, our penthouse office, watching the city lights glitter like scattered diamonds against the dark sky. The same city I'd grown up in, but transformed now by a perspective I'd never imagined having. From here, 30 floors above the streets, I could see the empire the Moretti family had built. Block by block, building by building, an intricate web of legitimate businesses and carefully hidden operations that kept this city running. And I was no longer just an observer. I was part of it. The Volkov contracts came through. I called over my shoulder to where Sebastian sat at his desk, reviewing reports. Dimitri's lawyers finally signed off on the revised terms. We're officially their legal counsel for all East Coast operations. Excellent. He didn't look up from his work, but I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. That should make the Castellanos think twice before approaching them again. The alliance I'd suggested after Marcus's betrayal had proven even more successful than anticipated. The Bratva got access to our legal expertise and money laundering infrastructure. We got a powerful ally and eyes on their operations. More importantly, we'd created a partnership that made it prohibitively expensive for either family to betray the other. The Castellanos, lacking similar leverage, had been forced to back down from their challenge to Moretti dominance. Luca had even sent a formal apology gift, a case of wine worth more than most people's cars, along with assurances of continued cooperation and respect for our territories. In the complex chess game of organized crime, we'd just captured a queen without firing a shot. Serafina. Sebastian's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Come here. I turned to find him watching me, his work forgotten. Even after 6 months together, that look still made my pulse quicken. Heat and possession, and something softer that he only showed me. You have that expression, I said, moving toward his desk. The one that means you're either about to tell me something I won't like, or you're planning to distract me from my work. Both, actually. He caught my hand as I reached him, pulling me around the desk and into his lap. Antonio made it official this afternoon. He's stepping down as head of the family in 3 months, retiring to that villa in Tuscany he's been talking about for years. My breath caught. We'd known this was coming. Antonio was 73 and had survived 3 heart attacks in the past decade. But knowing intellectually and facing the reality were different things. 3 months, I repeated. That's soon. Yes. Sebastian's arms tightened around me. Which means we need to make some decisions. About us, about the future, about how we want to structure things when I take over. When we take over, I corrected. We've been partners in this for 6 months now. I'm not stepping aside just because the title changes. His smile was small but genuine. I know. That's part of what I want to discuss. Traditional succession would mean I become head of the family, make all final decisions, maintain the same hierarchical structure Antonio built. But I don't want traditional. I want something better. What did you have in mind? He shifted slightly, reaching into his desk drawer to withdraw that familiar velvet box. My heart stuttered as he opened it, the emerald ring catching the lamplight. I want a partnership, Sebastian said quietly. Not the kind where you're my consort or my advisor, but a real partnership. Equals in power and responsibility. I take over the family operations. You head the legal and diplomatic divisions. We make major decisions together, present a united front to both our allies and enemies. We build something new. You want to revolutionize the power structure of a century-old crime family? I tried to keep my voice steady, despite the emotion welling in my chest. I want to marry you, he corrected. The revolution is just a bonus. Serafina Ricci, will you? The office door burst open. Dante rushed in, his face grim in a way that immediately put me on edge. We have a problem, he said without preamble. The Castellanos just hit the warehouse on the east side. 4 of our men are dead, and they took the entire month's protection collection. $2 million gone. Sebastian was on his feet in an instant, settling me carefully in his chair as he moved to meet his brother. How? Inside information. Someone told them exactly when the collection would be there, exactly how many guards would be on duty. Dante's jaw tightened. We have another traitor. The word hit like a physical blow. After everything we'd done to secure the organization, after all the investigations and security overhauls, someone was still selling information to our enemies. Call a full council meeting, Sebastian ordered. Everyone who has access to operational schedules needs to be there. Tonight. Already done. 30 minutes. Dante's gaze flickered to me, then back to his brother. They're asking if Serafina will be present. Of course I'll be present, I said, before Sebastian could answer. If someone's leaking information, we need everyone's perspective to figure out who. Sebastian turned to face me, and I could see the war behind his eyes, the desire to protect me from this ugliness, versus the knowledge that I'd proven myself capable of handling it. Fine, he said finally. But you stay by my side the entire time. We don't know yet who we can trust. The council meeting was held in the mansion's basement conference room, a space deliberately designed to be secure, soundproofed, and escape-proof. Around the long table sat the key members of the Moretti organization, section chiefs, financial managers, logistics coordinators. 20 people, any one of whom could be the traitor. My father sat to Sebastian's right, his expression carefully neutral. I took the seat on Sebastian's left, acutely aware of the significance. In this world, where you sat at the table mattered, and I was sitting in a position of power. Antonio, looking older than his years, presided at the head of the table with Sebastian beside him, a visual representation of the coming transition. 4 men are dead, Antonio began without preamble. The Castellanos knew exactly where to hit us, exactly when we'd be most vulnerable. Someone in this room provided that information. Silence greeted the accusation. I studied each face, looking for tells, for nervousness, for any sign of guilt. But everyone in this room was a professional. If there was a traitor among us, they weren't going to reveal themselves easily. "The timing is suspicious," Sebastian said, his voice cold and controlled. "The hit happened less than 2 hours after the collection was completed. That's information only people in this room would have." "Unless the information came from outside," suggested Marco, the logistics coordinator. "The collection crew knew the schedule too." "The collection crew has been with us for a decade," my father countered. "All trusted men, all with families we've helped support and protect. The leak came from someone with access to the master schedule, someone in this room." I leaned forward slightly, drawing attention. "The Castellanos wouldn't risk open war over $2 million, not after 6 months of peace. This isn't about the money. It's about making a statement, about proving there's still a threat despite our alliance with the Bratva." "Serafina's right," Dante said. "This is Luca's style. Calculated provocation designed to test our response." "Then we respond," Antonio said grimly. "But first, we find the traitor." For 3 hours, we dissected the operation, questioning everyone, checking alibis, reviewing communication logs. It was tedious, painstaking work, but necessary. Trust was the foundation of everything in this world. Without it, the entire structure collapsed. Finally, a pattern emerged. Small inconsistencies in one person's account, a phone call made at the wrong time, a detail known that shouldn't have been. Sofia Martinez, Antonio's personal assistant for 15 years, sat perfectly still as the evidence mounted against her. She was 63 years old, a grandmother, someone everyone trusted implicitly. "Sofia," Antonio said softly, and there was genuine pain in his voice. "Tell me it's not true." Her composure cracked. Tears streamed down her weathered face. "My grandson," she whispered. "Luca has my grandson. He took him 3 weeks ago. Said if I didn't help, he'd kill him. I had no choice. Please, Antonio. I had no choice." The room erupted in angry shouts, demands for immediate retaliation, calls for Sofia's execution. But Antonio raised a hand for silence. "How old is your grandson?" he asked quietly. 16. Just 16. Sofia was sobbing now. "He's all I have left. His parents are gone, it's just me and Miguel. I couldn't let them kill him." Sebastian's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. We both knew what should happen next. Sofia had betrayed the family. 4 men were dead because of her actions. The rules were clear. But Sofia's anguish was real. And 16-year-old Miguel hadn't chosen any of this. "Where's your grandson now?" I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Sofia looked up, hope flickering through her despair. "A house in the warehouse district. I have the address. They make me call every day to prove he's still alive." I glanced at Sebastian, then at Antonio. "This changes things. If the Castellanos are kidnapping family members to force cooperation, that's an escalation we can't ignore." "Agreed," Sebastian said. "Sofia betrayed us under duress. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. The real enemy here is Luca." "So we get the boy back," Dante said. "And then we end this once and for all." Antonio nodded slowly. "Sofia, you'll give us everything. The address, the schedules, the communication protocols. We'll get Miguel back. But your position here is over. Your family will be relocated, given new identities, protected. But you can never come back." "I understand," Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. Thank you for sparing us. The rescue operation was planned with military precision. Dante would lead the team, 12 of our best soldiers, hitting the house where Miguel was being held. Meanwhile, Sebastian and I would meet with Luca Castellano on neutral ground, a restaurant owned by a family friendly to both sides. You're not going, Sebastian said, as we prepared in his office. This meeting with Luca is too dangerous. Which is exactly why I need to be there. I checked my appearance in the mirror, adjusting the elegant black dress I'd chosen. You need a witness. Someone to document what's said, to ensure there's no misunderstanding about our position. Serafina. Don't. I turned to face him. We agreed. Partners. Equals. That means I don't sit on the sidelines when things get dangerous. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue further. We both knew I was right. The restaurant was elegant but sparse, the kind of place where privacy was guaranteed and questions weren't asked. Luca Castellano was already seated when we arrived, flanked by his own security detail. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, handsome in a polished way that reminded me uncomfortably of Marcus. Sebastian, how generous of you to meet me, Luca said, his smile not reaching his eyes. And you brought the lawyer. How professional. This is Serafina Ricci, Sebastian said coldly. My partner. And the reason you're still breathing. Luca's eyebrows rose. Oh? And why is that? Because she convinced me that killing you immediately would be bad for business, I said calmly, taking my seat across from him. But my patience has limits. Kidnapping a 16-year-old boy, forcing a grandmother to betray people she's worked with for 15 years. That's not business, Luca. That's terrorism. Strong words. But Luca's smile had faltered slightly. True words, Sebastian corrected. You wanted to test our strength, to see if we'd retaliate for the warehouse hit. Consider this your answer. His phone buzzed. Sebastian glanced at the message, then smiled. A cold, dangerous expression that made Luca's security detail shift nervously. Miguel Martinez has been recovered, Sebastian said. He's safe, unharmed, and being reunited with his grandmother as we speak. The men guarding him? Not so fortunate. Luca's face paled. You're making a mistake. No, you made the mistake. I leaned forward. You thought kidnapping one of our people's family members would make us look weak. Instead, you've given us justification to end this little Cold War you've been waging. We could destroy your organization tonight. Wipe out every Castellano operation in this city. The Bratva wouldn't lift a finger to stop us. We're far more valuable to them than you are. But we're not going to, Sebastian continued. Because that would destabilize the entire power structure, create chaos that benefits no one. Instead, we're offering you a choice. What choice? Luca asked tightly. Peace. Real peace, not this performative cooperation while you plot against us. Sebastian's gaze was unflinching. You acknowledge Moretti authority in this city. You pay reparations for the men you killed and the money you stole. And you never, ever touch our people's families again. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, every federal agency in this city receives a very detailed file about your operations, I said quietly. Tax evasion, racketeering, money laundering, murder for hire. All documented, all verifiable. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, and the Castellano family will be dismantled piece by piece. Luca stared at us for a long moment. Then he laughed, though it sounded forced. You're bluffing. You'd never bring in the feds. Try me, I said. I'm a lawyer, Luca. I know exactly how to make a case that no defense attorney could beat, and Sebastian doesn't bluff. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Luca nodded once, sharply. Fine, peace. Real peace. He stood, his security detail immediately moving to flank him. But don't mistake this for weakness. One day the balance will shift. Perhaps, Sebastian said, but not today. After Luca left, Sebastian and I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. You really compiled that evidence file? He asked finally. Started it 3 months ago, I admitted. The moment the Castellanos showed signs of becoming a problem again. Insurance policy. You're terrifying. But there was admiration in his voice. Brilliant and terrifying. I learned from the best. I reached across the table, taking his hand. So, where were we before Dante interrupted? Sebastian's laugh was genuine. I believe I was in the middle of a proposal. Were you? I feigned confusion. I don't recall hearing a question. He stood, moving around the table to kneel beside my chair. A powerful man making himself vulnerable, here in this neutral space where anyone could walk in. Serafina Ricci, he said, producing that velvet box once more. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner not just in business but in everything? Will you help me build something better than what came before? Something stronger, smarter, more enduring? Yes, I said, the word catching in my throat with emotion. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring onto my finger, the emerald catching the light, and kissed me with a tenderness that seemed impossible from a man who'd just orchestrated a rescue operation and potentially ended a war. I love you, he said against my lips. My dangerous, brilliant, impossible woman. I love you too, I replied, my cold, calculating, overprotective man who's not nearly as cold as he wants people to think. We left the restaurant hand in hand, stepping into a future that was uncertain but no longer frightening. 3 months from now, Sebastian would officially become head of the Moretti family, and I would stand beside him, not behind him, equal partner in building an empire that could endure. The girl who'd fallen in love at 18 with an impossible man had grown into a woman who could stand in the darkness and hold her own, who could negotiate with the Bratva, outmaneuver the Castellanos, and still remember that at the core of all this power and violence were real people trying to survive. As we drove back to the penthouse through the glittering city, I looked at the ring on my finger, a symbol not just of love, but of partnership, of trust, of two people who'd fought their way to each other through denial and danger and come out stronger for it. What are you thinking? Sebastian asked, his hand finding mine on the center console. That we're going to change everything, I said. That 5 years from now, the Moretti family will be stronger than it's ever been. More legitimate, more secure, more respected. Ambitious, he observed. You wouldn't want me any other way. No, he agreed, bringing my hand to his lips. I absolutely wouldn't. The future was unwritten, dangerous and uncertain, and full of challenges we couldn't yet imagine. But we'd face them together, partners, equals, bound not just by love, but by shared purpose and unshakable trust. And in this world of shadows and secrets, that was the most powerful weapon of all. This story reminds us that the heart knows what it wants, long before the mind is ready to accept it. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't about grand gestures, but about two people who finally stop running from what they've always known was true. If this story of forbidden love, second chances, and finding your equal in the darkness touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps us share more stories like this with women who appreciate depth, passion, and characters who refuse to be underestimated. Now I'm curious, have you ever loved someone you thought was impossible? Someone you had to fight for, or fight against, before you could finally be together? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today.